We could talk about so many things today, but the main focus of today is the film music. And we talked just shortly outside that I'm myself working as a sound designer in movies, and for me your music has been inspiring in so many ways. And I was thinking, originally, like going all the way back and trying to work through your work as a film composer a little chronologically, I thought it would be interesting to hear, how did your own passion for film start out? Where did that come from? When did you start watching movies?
You're talking about, movies. Well, I think we all watched movies as kids, didn't we? But I didn't write my first film score until, I was in my 30s. And I didn't really have plans to do very much film writing, and I've done a lot since then. By the time I got started, I had my own ideas about films, and I had lots of problems with directors. Of course, you know about that. And I actually ended up doing the commercial films in the way that they wanted. There's only one way that they do it. They finish the film and then you put in the music. That's how they do it. But I developed alternative ways of working, which I did with film, these were not the commercial films, these were the performance films that I've worked on. Things like a Dracula or La Belle et la Bête. And one of the things that I resisted was the formulaic way of working, which the difficulty with that was that the composer doesn't have a chance to engage the material of the film in a complete way. And I've had this discussion with a lot of filmmakers, and no one seems to understand, really and truly. Well, not no one. The two people I work with who knew a lot about film music were Martin Scorsese and Woody Allen. Those two guys really knew something about it. And they left me alone, totally. They never told me what to do. That's how I knew that they knew what they were doing. Because the trouble is when people don't know what they're doing and then they tell you what to not do, tell you what to do, you know what you shouldn't be doing it. That causes a lot of problems. So basically, unless you want to get fired, and sometimes you do want to get fired, the best thing to do is to get fired very quickly and get paid the what we call the kill fee, and then you can go home. And I've done that successfully a number of times. I pointed out to the filmmakers that asked them to do a very simple experiment, which is something that we've all done, just to put on the television and change music and watch the picture, and you'll see that the emotional point of view of the picture changes as with the music. But try it the other way. Try music and try changing the picture, and the music doesn't change. So that tells us that I would say the emotional content of the film almost is entirely in the music. This is a thought that is unknown to filmmakers, and they hate this. So I don't get very far with this argument. But I began, I've done a number of pieces where the film, in fact, at one point, I did a whole series of short films with filmmakers, and I commissioned them to write, to work with me, and I would do the music and then put the film with the music. We've performed it. It's a whole evening by itself. It's 5 short films. It was called Philip on Film. The producer is here someplace. Linda, are you here? Yeah, it was her idea actually. But at any rate, But in that film, I was able, except for the only person who resisted this was Peter Greenaway. And what he did, and he gave me, I had some music and he gave me a film and I put it to and I moved it around as I wanted to. And then he took it and then he recut the music. He wasn't supposed to do that. So I haven't worked with him since then. And I haven't worked with him before then either. So this idea of where, the real question is, at what point does the composer get engaged with the process? And what I did is that I would go to I got engaged at the very beginning. Of course, I would see a scenario, a film script beforehand, before it was even shot. And it wasn't that hard to figure out. It's a lot of a film script could be maybe 100 pages, and it might be 100 minutes long. So it's about a minute a page. It didn't get very far off of that. So if you had 3.5 pages that you had to score, it was about 3.5 minutes. You didn't, in fact, now, however, what I did do, which I wasn't allowed to, I had to wait till the film was being done, until then I could do it. But I had my own way of working, which is that I would only watch the film once. Okay. Therefore, I would have the normal memory lapses about what happened. And so I was able to make a distance between, what I was trying to do was to create a natural distance between the film and the music. And that it was my belief and my conviction, I should say, that the spectator who was watching, they are the ones that put the two things together. We don't do it, they do it. And if we do it, we don't have to do it completely, as we say, we don't have to put the mustache on the Mona Lisa, or you don't have to put the bark on the dog. We don't have to do that. If you do that, you've entered the world of propaganda. You're not talking about art anymore. And that's what the big difference is. If you leave enough room for the spectator to adjust his expectations to what is actually happening, it becomes a much more creative situation for everybody. But again, I've been able to talk with you about this, but almost no one in Hollywood ever would even listen to this talk. Now, from time to time, when I would be out there, there's a kind of a guild of film composers, and they get together and complain to each other about what's going on, basically. And one time it was my turn to give a talk, and I gave a talk. And there were about 50, 60 people there. Not a big crowd. And but they're all film composers, and I got to know a lot of them over the time. And in this one talk, one of them said to me, he said, "Phil, tell me, what is the difference between opera and film?" And I thought for a moment, and I said, "Not much, except the workplace is different." And that's the point. The workplace has been constructed by producers and filmmakers. It's not an organic or sympathetic place for a composer to work in. Have you noticed that? You work on films. Yeah,
exactly. And the creative process, that's always the difficult part.
Let everybody know what you do so that you're not hiding.
No, I'm a sound designer for movies, but also doing a lot of like being a big part of the music process, because I think there's so many movies where music is an afterthought. I mean, it's not a part of the process. And I think the earlier that you can be part of the process as a composer and as a sound person,
that's the best way to do it, of course, yeah. And we're not usually allowed to do that. I've only done, actually the person who let me do it was Scorsese. And I had heard he was working on a Dalai Lama movie that was Kundun. Was it 95 or 96, something like that?
Yeah,
something around that time. And I had heard Melissa Matheson was a writer. She also wrote that one about E.T.
Yeah, exactly.
She's a very well-known film scriptwriter. And she said, we both belonged to an organization in New York called Tibet House, which was a cultural center for Tibetan refugee workers, this kind of thing. And she called me and said, we were both on the board, so she said, Marty is making a movie about the Dalai Lama. I said, I have to see him. So I went to see him, and I knew him for a couple of other reasons, but I had met him a number of times before. And so we talked about the film, and he said, well, okay, well, I'll see you in a few months. I said, no, Marty, we have to start now. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, what I'd like to do is, let's just go walking, rolling. So he said, I'd like to, he said, I'm going to put the music in. I'll have to do the film first. I said, no. So what I want to do is let me write the film. I'll do it reel by reel. In those days, we had 6 reels. Now we don't. You know, we still talk about reels, but we don't have reels anymore. But it's a way of talking about the time length of the movie.
It's back, just a short explanation. A reel is back in the old days where you had 35mm prints and you could only have like 20 minutes on each reel. So during the process you talked about splitting it into reels.
In fact, in Kundan, there's one reel, the 5th reel, which is the escape from Tibet, is 24 minutes. And he had to get an extra large a reel to do it, and he did. He managed to do that. And I said, no, I want to start now. And I said, I'm going to write the music, not to explain what I was going to do. And he just shook his head. And I said, look, where are you shooting? They're shooting in Morocco. And they were going to do the mountains later. He said, I'll send the music to you while you're filming it. And so the actors can hear the music before the act. And I just went on. And finally, he was quiet for a long time. And I said, Marty, we have to do this right now. And he went like this. Okay. And he let me do it. And in fact, what happened was that I had only got up to around the 4th reel. Oh, I hadn't done the 5th reel yet. And I was on tour with my ensemble. And I got a call from him. And he said, okay, we need the music for the 5th reel. I said, well, when do you need it? He said, I'm starting on Monday. I have to have the music. I must have it now. What was happening, he would take the music and he would play the music for all the actors. And they got into that process where they could hear the music before the scenes. In fact, in some cases, I actually, with Godfrey Reggio, I had the cinematographer listen to the music while he was filming. I really got that far ahead of the game. So I was in some place, I think it was in London somewhere, and I had the weekend also. I flew home, and I did the 5th reel in 2 days, which is a very short time. And I said, okay, this is kind of what it's going to be, but I'm going to have to redo this. And I sent it to him, and I never had to redo it. It worked perfectly. And so, but the point is that I got him to the point where he wouldn't film until he had the music. Wow. But that never happened again. Not with him or anybody else. But anyway, so this is here's the point is this. The elements of a film are like, when I said it's like opera, we have text, we have movement, we have image, and we have music. The 4, it's like earth, air, fire, and water. The 4 elements are all there. In any collaborative work, there'll be 2 or 3. Sometimes there'll be 4. The only ones that have 4 will be film and opera. Otherwise, dance will maybe have movement and image, and music, but it won't have the text might not be there, or play might not have the movement of that kind. So, but if you look at it that way, then basically my consideration was that the emotional point of view of the film will be in the music, which I'm convinced that it is. And therefore that should be the basis on which you do the rest of it. So actually, the point is that the beginning actually is the script. You have to read that first, and then you can mark it up the way you want to, and then you can put the music where you like. But the only people that have really let me do that, Godfrey Reggio, who did the Cossi movies, we did all the movies like that. And sometimes Earl Morris, a little bit, he let me do it, but not very much. The filmmaking is a big control business, and it's a question of who runs it. Well, it used to be the directors, now it's the producers, and now it's the studios.
It's getting worse and worse.
It's getting worse and worse, and the movies are getting worse too, but no one seems to mind.
I want to talk a bit more about your collaboration with both Godfrey Reggio and Errol Morris, but I think it's time for you to play the first
Okay, I'm going to play a piece which actually ended up being in a film. I just remember that, and it was actually in Errol Morris's film. Let's see, I think it was called The Thin Blue Line. I think it's the music that you hear at the very beginning. And I might have written the music for the film and then made it into, actually it's a piano piece I play all the time now. It's a short piece, about 6 minutes.
Thank you. That did indeed really send me back to The Thin Blue Line. It's that movie is so powerful. I watched it actually a couple of years ago in New York in a restored new transfer, and it's such an amazing film.
There's a film about a man that was in jail in Houston for a murder he hadn't had anything to do with, and the film begins with what you see with that music is the skyline of Houston. No, it was Dallas. Sorry, it was the skyline of Dallas, and you hear the voice of this accused person, I forget his name, and he says, "My mother said to me once, if there ever was a hell on earth, it was Dallas," and that's the music you heard.
On the soundtrack, there's a lot of the interviews from the film kind of melded into your music in a really beautiful, brilliant way. Like you hear these interviews like intersected with your music, and it's interesting because I met Errol Morris at ITFA, at Documentary Festival in Amsterdam last year, and he was asked about this, like this way that music and words kind of went together, and he said for him the words were music as well. And then he also said that you and him apparently originally had the same music teacher, that you and Errol Morris had the same music teacher in original.
He actually had been to music school.
Yeah.
He was a cellist. Yeah. In fact, if I write music for him, he'll ask me to send him the score. And he'll sit down and play it on the piano, which is a little discomforting. I'm not particularly interested in having the director play the music on the piano.
But it's such an integral part of the movies that you've done together.
Well, yes, but he has his own. We have our own. He also likes to put music in places where I didn't intend it. I think he does that just to tease me. But I've sent him a score. It's never. This music is always there, but it's never in the form that I sent it to him.
But it works amazingly well.
I know. I think it's just a little. As I said, the film world is full of control and power issues. It's one of the
fog of war.
Well, it happens all through the film business. Where the picture editor tries to tell the composer how to write. Oh, come on, you know that.
Exactly.
Yeah. They do it all the time.
Yeah.
And they spend hours and hours in the editing room with the director. So they have But now when I work with Marty, his editor was Thomas Schoonmaker, we worked with a long time. And I had finished the music, but I was very interested in Marty's ideas about film, and he liked to talk about, he knows everything about film. So I spent a lot of time in the editing room with him. Not because he would, we had differences of opinions, and he always won, of course. I mean, there was one place where there was I had written a piece of music, and he said, no, the trombone's in the wrong place. I said, no, what do you mean? He said, no, the trombone has to come later. And I said, look, Marty, I can't do that. He said, what do you mean you can't do it? I said, well, I wrote this piece in the form of a chaconne and explained what a chaconne was. This is a repeated harmonic pattern. I said, and so the trombone can only come in at the beginning of the pattern, so it can't come in the middle somewhere. And he went, oh, just put it in what I told you to. No, actually what he did, he said, now let me show you something. And he took out he had a shooting script that he worked from. And in it was this particular scene, and it was a certain place where there was the camera angle was going to change and the light was going to go up on the figure. And he put a mark over that. He said, I want the trombone there. In other words, what he did, I don't know many people that did that. He would have a shooting script, and he would actually put in the lighting moves. Wow. He actually planned the whole movie before he shot it. But then he wanted the music to conform to it, so of course he ruined my chaconne, but he was happy.
Yeah.
How about your collaboration with Godfrey Reggio on the Katsi trilogy?
Well,
and also
Godfrey does really let me do pretty much what I want. We've done 6 movies now. I got a 7th one he's starting to work on. And we're working at the same time. When we begin working, he's working on the first reel, because he runs out of money by the second reel, and he has to stop, and has to go and get the money. So it can take. Kanaskasi took about 3 years to finish, not because he was working on it for 3 years, but he was raising money for 3 years. So what would happen? I was living in New York, and he was living in Venice, California, which is Los Angeles. And about every month or so, I would fly out to California, and I would look and see how it was getting along with it. And I would write the music, I would send it to him, and there would only be maybe 10 minutes completed at that moment. And then he would show me what he was doing, and basically he was cutting to the movie, to the music. It was I could work much more quickly than he could, because the materials of music are very fluid, they're very easy to work with. The materials of film are very complicated and expensive. So to reshoot a film can be a disaster for a low-budget film, because they may not have the money actually to do it. Well, we didn't have the money either, but basically, he didn't have the money till the very end of the picture, and so it took a long time to do that. But during that time, we had time to put the images and the music together. And mostly I started, and then he would do something, and then I would add to it, or then he would basically, I would say, how long is this image, how long is this scene? He said, well, let's say it's 9 minutes. So I would write a piece that was 9 minutes long, and he said, well, it's actually a little bit long, and so I would cut it down to what he wanted. And so basically we would shape the music and the images together, and we did it kind of scene by scene. But I also, besides that, usually the film wasn't even completely photographed yet. So and I normally would go out. I would go and to the shooting sessions too. So when we were doing Powakatsi, which we'll be playing next week in Norway. When we were, he would I would go with him to. He was shooting in South America, and I would go there and see where that film is in the Serra Pelada mines of gold mines in Brazil. And I knew that's where we were going to start. But there was a film that Jacques Cousteau made of that same place. It was in black and white, but it was the same place. And an earlier version of it, but it was still the same. And I saw it, so I knew what it looked like. So I wrote a piece, that piece was about, it was for the opening of the film. And then I made what we call a work tape or a demo tape. And when we got there, I gave it to the cinematographer, and he had a headset, and he listened to it while he was filming. So so while he was filming it, he was listening to the music that I was filming to.
Wow.
It gets even better than that. So then, so the guys that were working in the mines are all about 17 or 18. They're very young, and I had learned. I began studying Portuguese so I could speak with them. And they said, what are you doing here? And I said, we're making a film. And they said, can we hear it? And I said, see. And so the first guys, and see, this was a kind of coal mine where they're taking the dirt up to the top, and it goes through a sluice, and the water goes over it, and the gold stays in the water, and the dirt goes out. That's how it works there. And so they had to carry these huge bags up up these ladders, and so I played the music for them, and after a while, there were a lot of guys there, but we were in one part of that location, so maybe 12 or 15 people heard the music, and I played it for them, and then they say, "Todo bem, very good, very good." They liked the music. They were very, very young. I think they were about 17 or 18 years old, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And they said, "Oh, there's gold everywhere, everywhere." And I said, "Well, what are you going to do with the money?" And they said, one guy said, "Well, I'm going to go home to my town and open a VW cars." You know, they had these kind of. Yeah. They were trying to get enough money but actually they never did that. What happened is that they would, when you were, we were there for 3 or 4 days, and when they would find a nugget could fit in your palm, your hand like that, just a gold nugget. They could find a whole nugget like that, and that could be worth about $30,000. And when every once in a while you would hear this roar coming from someplace because someone had found a nugget, and in the mornings they would be lined up. I mean, it was very, very interesting to be there, and of course it was interesting for me because I had written the music, but then once I had been there, I saw I saw how young they were. I didn't realize that from looking at the Cousteau movie, that they were very young. So I decided to have a children's choir, and I found some text for that, and I added it to the music that was there. So when you hear that piece now, if you go listen to what's called Powakatsi, it begins with this. It's a very, very energetic piece, and it's almost like a dance, and it evokes a feeling of these young people that you start to see how that they really are like children. And then you hear the children singing. So if I hadn't gone there, I wouldn't have seen that, and I wouldn't have known that, and that element would not have been in the film. So that just gives you an idea. When you go to this, when you can see actually what's going on, it'll change the way you write the music.
Yeah, inspiration works both ways. Inspiration works both ways. So
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, there were so many funny stories about that place, but let's go on.
I just wanted to ask you shortly about Woody Allen, because you mentioned him yourself. Woody Allen, I mean, for me, it was so amazing that he suddenly worked with you as a composer on one of his movies. I heard that even that movie, Cassandra, was his first movie in stereo, because usually he works only in mono, but then your music came in, and then he did that in stereo.
Woody has his schedule is this, he writes his films in the wintertime, in February and March. He shoots them in the summer. He edits them in the fall, and around the beginning of December he goes on tour with his band. He has a little clarinet. He plays clarinet. And so he does that every year. He does a movie every year. That just was the movie that I got. And mostly he does what we call needle drops.
Exactly.
He takes scores, and he doesn't really work with a lot of composers. And so he didn't, when I met him, and I got a call saying that Mr. Allen's going to call you. It's a good thing they had told me that, because if someone, I picked up the phone and said, "This is Woody Allen," I would have hung it up. It was obviously a prank call, but it was going to be Woody Allen. He called up. He said he wanted to talk about a film, and I went to see him. And he had never done this. He had never worked with a living composer. So I looked at the film. I said, "I can do this." And he said, "Oh, okay." And then he said, "Now what do we do?" I said, "Well, Woody, we have to spot the movie." And he said, "Well, what's that?" I said, "Well, you have to tell me where put the music." He just went like this. No. no, I'm not going to do that. I said, well, how are we going to do this? He said, just put the music in. I said, well, where does it go? He says, well, put the music in where it goes. He was a funny guy. I did that, and I made 2 mistakes, not really. Mostly he didn't say anything, made no comment about where the placement. One time he said, oh, there's no music there. I said, oh, look, I'll just write a different piece. I thought he didn't like the piece. He said, no, there's no music there. I said, Woody, I'll have it ready you can have it tomorrow. He said, no, I don't want any music there. I said, oh, okay, so I took it out. Then this happened for a period of weeks. So about a week or so later, we got to another place in the film. He said, oh, is there music there? And I said, yes. He said, okay. He had very little, he almost never said anything.
Wow.
So he said, well, what can I do to help? When you've done the music, I said, well, I'll come up here and I'll bring you the demos, but I'm not playing it for your picture editor. I'm going to play it for you. I don't want to hear from someone else what you thought. So you're going to tell me. He said, okay. So I would go up there, and then he would, it was very funny. So I would sit like a chair, and there was the console was there. In those days, I think we were doing digital movies by then.
Yeah.
So you didn't have all the stuff hanging on the walls the way you used to, So they would put up the music, and then they would play the cue, and then he would be behind me, and after the cue, there would be a moment of silence, and then he would lean down and say in my ear, "Good." That's all he said.
Wow.
Now, at the beginning, this film, he does these murder films too, besides the funny films, the romantic films. He does these. This is a triple murder film. The 2 guys, the 2 murderers get killed, but the guy that they murdered is also killed. The 3 people get killed, all at the end of the movie. So I knew it's a really. So I decided, I didn't know what Woody was like at all. I didn't know what he would like to hear. But I decided that on the very first piece, I better find out. So if I was going to get fired, I'd rather be fired in the first week. That way I get paid and I can go home. But the first piece was the credits. So I decided to write a kind of Verdi overture, kind of like Rigoletto, something really, really down, really mean. So I wrote a really dark piece, and it was about 3 or 4 minutes, just long for the credits. So I put it up, and he looked at it, and he said, well, that's very dark. I said, I know it's very dark. He said, well, maybe we should start with something less dark. He said, okay, I'll write you something else. He said, no. Let me listen to it for a while. I said, look, Woody, if you do it this way, then at the end, after the double murder at the end, we can put that at the end again, and then we'll know why it was there. At the beginning, we won't know, but at the end, it'll be the same exact piece. Only instead of being the overture, it'll be like the end of the end of the tragedy. And he just didn't say anything. Then he went off. To do his tour in December. We hadn't finished editing yet, so I didn't know how it ended. And he never told me. So finally I got a message to go up. He said, you can come and see the movie now. So I got Michael Reisman. That's the fellow that was sitting opposite me last night on the piano. That Michael mixed the demos with me at that time. He did. And so I said, Michael, come up. We can look at Woody's new movie. So we got up there, and everything was where it was supposed to be, and we got the end, and first of all, he used the overture for where I wanted it. We got the end, and he put it there. I said, oh. So I like Woody. I thought, but I think that maybe the experiences for Woody and for Marty were too intense because I never heard from either of them again. But I mean, they actually, in that world, people change. You generally change people all the time anyway.
Philip, we could go on and on, but you
Yeah,
should
I
also
know a
play
lot of
another
stories,
piece.
but we don't have that
exactly.
much time.
You have one more piece, piano piece to play, and that's going to round off today's talk.
This is a piece that wasn't actually for a film. It was actually written for the organ of Cathedral St. John the Divine in New York, which is a very big, it's the biggest cathedral we have in New York. And again, the Dalai Lama was involved with this one too, because he was giving a talk there, and the people who were asked him to give the talk weren't sure when he would come, so they asked me to write a piece of indefinite length, which was kind of something I don't have trouble doing. So I wrote this piece for the organ, and then later, Lucinda Childs, who was the choreographer of most of the performances of Einstein, she did those except for the very first ones. She took it and she turned. By that time, I turned it into a piano piece, and she calls it Mad Rush, and she turned it into a dance. So again, this is a piece that began as a music piece and ended up being a dance piece. The other one ended up being a film piece and ended up being a concert piece. So this is how this happens. It's a little bit longer. It was the length of the piece was. He was only 14 minutes late, so that's how long the piece is.
Right. Well, thank you.